The last game for this year's October Review-a-thon is The Binding of Isaac. Never heard of it? If the answer is no, it would be pretty surprising. It's one of those simplistic games that could be thought of as a simple Newgrounds time waster, but eventually evolves into a full-on release. For such a simple-looking game, you'd think that it wouldn't fare too well on the fun scale, but you'd be sorely mistaken by thinking this. You play as a young child named Isaac, who is living alone with his mother. His mother starts hearing the voice of God, who eventually wants her to sacrifice Isaac to prove her loyalty to him. Being that she is a devout Christian, she of course attempts to oblige, but Isaac overhears the plan and leaps into a mysterious trapdoor he finds in his room. He plummets into an odd underground cavern, and now he just needs to find a way out with his life. Of course, things aren't quite so simple. Plenty of horrific creatures live in these crypts, and Isaac's only weapon are the tears he sheds. They must be some holy water tears or something, because they tend to be lethal to his demonic opponents. Isaac can upgrade his tears though. There are multitudes of power-ups that can be found in the Zelda-style dungeons that can increase the range, power, and even the overall look of the tears. Due to the overall short length of the game, you won't find every power-up every time you play. It's going to be up to you to utilize each item the best that you can. Of course, weapon upgrades aren't the only thing you'll be able to find. You'll find pills laying around that can either help or hinder you. There are also tarot cards that can be good or bad to your journey. I tended to only use these in emergencies. That's because although many of them are helpful, such as teleporting you away to a safe area, restoring your health, or maybe even getting you an extra heart or two, some can be detrimental, such as taking your life away or spawning in a bunch of hostile bombs. Perhaps I've gone too far ahead of myself by talking about the weapons before the actual gameplay. If you'd call Binding of Isaac a clone of the original Zelda, well then I'd say you're correct. The whole point of the game is to keep delving further and further into these dungeons until you reach who else but Mom. To complete the current level, you have to avoid or take down enemies, find the power-ups that may help you succeed, and find the boss room in order to take it down to the end of the stage. There's a lot of randomness in your journey though. For one, each level is generated from a large pool of rooms. It seems like the only thing that is a constant is a safe starting room and the boss room. In between here and there, you might run into an arcade to gamble for some more coins or items. Hidden rooms can be found by dropping bombs in suspect areas. Shops can be found, manned by not quite alive creatures. There are also rooms that give you a free item, usually some sort of tier upgrade. You typically want to scour each room to see what you can find. Although some areas will lock your exits until you remove all enemies, it doesn't happen often. There are two types of boss rooms, the regular end of stage boss room and the mini boss rooms. Mini bosses are typically based on the 7 deadly sins, and the regular bosses are typically large monstrosities that tend to attack aggressively. The interesting thing is that, just like the rest of the game, the bosses you'll face on each floor aren't set in stone. The enemy groups that you'll face will definitely get harder as you progress further down the hole, but it's not set that on floor 1, you'll always face this boss. On floor 4, you'll face this one, and so on. I love this unknown feeling to the game, and it helps add tension to an already stressful run. You might think, Reaper, how is this game stressful? Well, there's plenty of reasons. First off, look at it. It's dark, dreary, depressing, and overall has a very deathly atmosphere. Enemies share that disturbing vibe, with lots of blood, dirt, and even feces being projected all over the place. Among all this, you only start with 3 hearts, and increasing the maximum health of Isaac isn't guaranteed. Sometimes all you can hope for are the temporary boost of the blue hearts, in which they get added to your health as a buffer but cannot be replenished by collecting the red hearts. So if you run into a boss room, there's no guarantee that you'll have much health and may have to play extremely cautiously in order to avoid starting over. And that's because there's no checkpoints. If you die, you need to start back at the beginning. You cannot save at any point either. When you sit down and play Binding of Isaac, it's a simple play until you die or finish the game mentality. And that's ultimately what makes the game so good. The sense of not knowing what's in the next room, the lack of the ability to continue your game if you need to stop or if you perish, and the complete randomness of everything helps lend to a game that makes you think, okay, one more run. We can get better stuff this time around. Do you play it safe and go searching right for a boss room, or do you explore every single nook and cranny of the stage? With so many options, there's a heavy sense of replayability to the game. That's it for Binding of Isaac. There's not a ton to say since it's such an easy game to pick up and play, and there's not a lot to it, but it's an extremely difficult game to master. Even to this day, I've never finished it, and I've only gotten to the final boss a small handful of times. Even when you think that you're running through the areas like a freight train, Due to a blessing of abilities, one bad boss encounter could be all it takes to end your game quickly. And with the high-risk, high-reward gameplay of many of the optional rooms, such as the slot machines, the sacrificial zones that allow you to pay for potentially amazing upgrades with your life force, or even the hunt for power-ups that don't explicitly tell you what they do, it's always a guessing game that will force you to experiment to get really good at it. The Binding of Isaac is a game that anyone can enjoy, although some elements may steer the squeamish away. It's also not one that will demand a huge time investment every day to master the elements of it. The game will run on pretty much any computer that exists, so there's no reason to avoid the game. Check it out, if you dare. Final score? 7 out of 7. This is Reaper. Happy fragging.